I'm relieved my husband is going to prison. The gavel came down at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in 3 years. 3 years, minimum security, the judge announced, and while David's mother sobbed behind me and his lawyer scribbled notes about appeals, I sat perfectly still and tried not to smile. 3 years. 3 beautiful, quiet, David-free years. I know how that sounds. I know what kind of wife that makes me. But you didn't live with a constant knot in your stomach, checking your bank account 17 times a day only to watch the numbers shrink like ice in July. You didn't come home to find your grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she pressed into your palm before she died, gone from your jewelry box, sold to some pawn shop for $200 to feed the slot machines at Rivers Casino. The prosecutor had laid it all out during the trial. $237,000. That's what David had cost us, though there was no us in any of his decisions. The joint savings account I'd been building since I was 22, drained in 18-month increments. Forged signatures on 3 separate loans, including a second mortgage on my childhood home that I'd inherited from my parents. He'd been good at it too, practiced my signature until it was better than the real thing. But the charity money was what did him in. $38,000 from the Children's Cancer Fund at his accounting firm, moved in small amounts over 6 months. When they caught him, he tried to blame a computer error. Then a disgruntled employee. Finally, he'd sat in our kitchen at 1 a.m., crying and swearing it was just temporary, that he'd had a system, that he was going to win it all back. Sarah, please, he'd whispered that night, reaching for my hands across the table. You have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. But I'd stopped believing him somewhere around the 15th time I'd asked about our dwindling account and he blamed everything from bank fees to identity theft. I'd stopped believing him when he told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that maybe I should see someone about my anxiety. The really sick part? I had started seeing someone. Dr. Martinez, every Thursday at 4 p.m., convinced that I was losing my mind because the numbers never added up and David was so calm, so reasonable, so hurt that I would question his love for me. Mrs. Patterson? I blinked back into the courtroom. The bailiff was looking at me expectantly. People were standing, gathering their things. David was already gone, led away in handcuffs that caught the fluorescent light. He looked back at me once, his eyes pleading, but I'd steadied my hands instead. Ma'am, are you all right? Yes, I said, and meant it for the first time in years. Yes, I'm fine. David's mother, Patricia, appeared at my side as I stood. Her face was blotchy and swollen, tissues clutched in her manicured hands. Sarah, honey, we need to talk about the appeals process. David's lawyer thinks. No. The word came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. Patricia, I'm going home now. But Sarah, he's your husband. He needs you now more than ever. I looked at her, really looked, and saw David's same talent for rewriting reality to suit his needs. He stopped being my husband the day he stole my grandmother's necklace, I said quietly. Patricia's face crumpled like I'd slapped her. He made mistakes, Sarah. People make mistakes. You can't just abandon him. Mistakes? The word tasted bitter. Patricia, he stole from cancer kids. Children with cancer. But she was already turning away, muttering something about loyalty and marriage vows to David's sister Janet, who'd flown in from Phoenix for the sentencing. I watched them huddle together, shooting glances at me like I was the criminal. The courthouse steps were brutal in the October wind. I fumbled for my keys, eager to get to my car before any reporters could corner me. David's case had made the local news, local accountant embezzles from children's charity, and I'd already had 3 journalists call the house. Sarah, wait up. I turned to see Marcus Chin jogging toward me, his tie whipping in the wind. Marcus worked with David at Brennan and Associates, had been David's friend since college. Had been our friend, I thought, until everything came apart and I realized how many people had probably known pieces of the truth. Hey, he said, slightly out of breath. I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. About all of it. I studied his face. Marcus had always been genuine, one of the few people in David's circle who didn't treat conversation like a poker game. Did you know? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment, shoving his hands deep in his coat pockets. Not about the charity fund. I swear to God, Sarah, none of us knew about that. But, there were signs. The casino stuff. Last year at the company Christmas party, he was showing everyone this app on his phone. Some kind of sports betting thing. He'd won $800 that day, kept buying rounds for everyone. Marcus looked miserable. We thought it was just fun, you know? Like fantasy football or something. $800. I remembered that night. David had come home giddy, talking about his Christmas bonus coming in early. I'd been so relieved, we'd been behind on the mortgage for 2 months, and I'd been picking up extra shifts at the clinic just to cover groceries. He told me it was a bonus, I said. Jesus, Sarah. I'm sorry. If I'd known he was lying to you. What? You would have told me? I didn't bother hiding my skepticism. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, there's something else. Something you should probably know before you hear it somewhere else. My stomach clenched. Even now, even with David locked away, there were still more shoes to drop. What? The FBI seized his laptop last week. Turns out he was running some kind of side business. Investment consulting, he called it. Taking money from people and promising huge returns. The words hit me like ice water. How much money? We don't know yet. But Sarah, some of these people, they invested their retirement savings. Their kids' college funds. Marcus looked like he might be sick. The feds think it might be another $100,000, maybe more. I leaned against my car, trying to process this new layer of devastation. It wasn't enough that David had destroyed our life, stolen from sick children. Now there were other victims, other families who trusted him. Did he? I started, then stopped. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Did he what? Did he use my name? For the investment thing? Marcus's expression told me everything I needed to know before he said a word. Sarah, I'm so sorry, Marcus said, and the way he couldn't meet my eyes told me everything. He had business cards made. Patterson Financial Consulting. Your name was listed as co-founder. The parking lot tilted sideways. I gripped my car door handle so hard the metal cut into my palm. How many people? My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. 12 that we know of. Maybe more. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. The FBI agent, Rodriguez, she said they're still tracking down all the accounts. But Sarah, one of them was Mrs. Kowalski. Mrs. Kowalski. Our 73-year-old neighbor who brought us tomatoes from her garden every summer and asked David to help her set up online banking because she trusted him. Sweet Mrs. Kowalski who'd lost her husband last spring and moved to that little apartment downtown because she couldn't afford the house anymore. How much? I whispered. 47,000. Her whole 401k. I actually bent over then, hands on my knees, trying not to vomit on the courthouse steps. $47,000. Mrs. Kowalski's entire future, gone because my husband was a liar and a thief and had somehow made her believe I was part of it. She thinks I knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded miserably. The FBI showed her the business cards. Your signature was on some of the paperwork. Forged. Just like everything else. I know that. You know that. But these people. Marcus gestured helplessly. They're scared and angry and they trusted both of you. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then it started ringing, a number I didn't recognize. I declined the call, but it immediately rang again. Different number. The story's going online in about an hour, Marcus said quietly. Channel 8 got hold of the FBI report. Local woman questioned in husband's Ponzi scheme, that's the headline. I stared at my phone as it rang for the third time. By tonight, everyone in Pittsburgh would think I was complicit. The nurses at the clinic where I worked, the lady at the coffee shop who knew my order by heart, my book club, my yoga instructor, they'd all see my name linked to David's crimes. Marcus, I need you to know something. I straightened up, looked him directly in the eye. I had no idea. About any of it. The gambling, the charity money, and especially not this investment scam. I was working double shifts just to keep us afloat while he was stealing from cancer kids and senior citizens. I believe you, Sarah. But it's not me you need to convince. Another call. This time I recognized the number, KDKA Newsroom. I'd called them once 2 years ago about a pothole on my street that the city wouldn't fix. I should go, I said, fumbling for my keys again. Wait. Marcus caught my arm gently. There's one more thing. Agent Rodriguez wants to meet with you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. at the federal building. She says it's just routine questions, but I should get a lawyer. Yeah. Probably. A lawyer. With what money? David had made sure there wasn't any left, and now I'd probably lose my job once the story broke. Who wants a nurse they think is a con artist handling their medication? As I drove home through the streets I'd known my whole life, I passed the bus stop where Mrs. Kowalski used to wait for the 61C. A for rent sign hung in the window of what used to be the Martinez family's corner store. Maybe they were another one of David's victims. The whole neighborhood looked different now, like I was seeing it through a dirty lens. My phone rang 6 more times before I got home. The local news van was already parked across from my house. I parked in my garage and sat in the dark for 20 minutes, watching the news van through my rearview mirror. The reporter, a blonde woman in a red coat I recognized from the morning show, kept checking her phone and reapplying lipstick. Waiting for me to emerge so she could shove a microphone in my face and ask how it felt to steal Christmas money from dying children. When I finally worked up the courage to go inside, I found my answering machine blinking with 17 messages. I pressed play while deadbolting the door behind me. Sarah, this is Linda from Channel 11. We'd love to give you the opportunity to tell your side of delete. Mrs. Patterson, this is Attorney James Walsh. If you're facing federal charges, you need experienced representation, delete. You lying bitch. My mother trusted you. She trusted you and now she's eating cat food because, delete, but my hands were shaking now. The fourth message made my blood stop. Hi Sarah, this is Principal Coleman from Roosevelt Elementary. I'm calling about your application for our school nurse position. Given the recent developments, the school board has decided to pursue other candidates. I'm sorry, but I sank onto my couch, staring at the phone. The job at Roosevelt had been my escape plan, better hours, better pay, a chance to work with kids instead of dealing with the politics at the clinic. I'd interviewed 3 times, met with parents, even attended a PTA meeting as a potential new staff member. The principal had called Friday to say I was their top choice. That was before my husband made national news. Message 8 was from Dr. Patel, my supervisor at the clinic. Sarah, I need you to call me as soon as possible. We've had some concerns raised by patients after the news broke. Nothing official yet, but the hospital administration wants to meet with you Monday morning. Just call me, okay? So I was losing both jobs. Current and future, gone in one afternoon. Message 12 was the one that broke me. Sarah? It's Mom. My mother's voice, tight with disappointment and confusion. She lived in Florida now, remarried to a kind man named Robert who sent me birthday cards and pictures of their garden. Honey, Robert saw something online about David and you. There has to be some mistake. Call me as soon as you get this. I told Robert you would never, just call me, sweetheart. Please. Even my mother wasn't sure. I was still staring at the answering machine when someone pounded on my front door. 3 sharp knocks that made my heart jump. Mrs. Patterson? FBI. We need to speak with you. Through the peephole, I could see a woman in a dark suit holding up a badge. Agent Rodriguez, probably. Behind her stood a younger man, also in a suit, and behind them I could see the news reporter perking up like a hunting dog catching a scent. Mrs. Patterson, we know you're home. We just need to ask a few questions. Questions. At 8:30 at night, with cameras rolling across the street. This wasn't a friendly chat about David's crimes, this was a show. A demonstration for the news crews that the FBI was taking this seriously, that they were investigating every angle. Including me. I thought about pretending I wasn't home, but my car was in the driveway and lights were on. Instead, I cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. I don't have a lawyer yet, I said. Agent Rodriguez was about my age, with kind eyes that didn't match the badge. We understand that, Mrs. Patterson. But we have some time-sensitive questions about accounts that were opened in your name. If you cooperate now, it could help clarify your level of involvement. Level of involvement. Like I was definitely involved, just a question of how much. What accounts? The younger agent consulted his phone. Cayman Islands International Bank. Account opened September 15, 2023. Initial deposit of $84,000. The date hit me like a physical blow. September 15th was my birthday. David had surprised me with dinner at that expensive restaurant downtown, the one where we'd had our first anniversary. He'd seemed so happy that night, so relieved about something. I thought he was finally getting his anxiety under control. Instead, he'd been celebrating stealing enough money to open an offshore account in my name. I've never heard of that bank, I said through the crack in the door. Mrs. Patterson, Agent Rodriguez said gently, we have your signature on the account documents. That's not my signature, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how hollow they sounded. How many times had David practiced forging my name? How perfect had he gotten at it? Agent Rodriguez exchanged a glance with her partner. Mrs. Patterson, we'd really prefer to have this conversation inside. Away from. She gestured toward the news van. The reporter was definitely filming now, her cameraman positioned to catch whatever drama was about to unfold on my front porch. I could already see tomorrow's headline, FBI questions wife of embezzler at home. I closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it again. 5 minutes, I said. They followed me into my living room, and I watched Agent Rodriguez's eyes catalog everything, the stack of unopened bills on the coffee table, the bare spot on the mantel where my grandmother's silver candlesticks used to sit, the suitcase in the corner that I'd packed 3 days ago but hadn't had the courage to carry to my car. Mrs. Patterson, the younger agent said, pulling out a tablet, I'm Agent Morrison. We're going to record this conversation, if that's all right. Do I have a choice? You can request an attorney and we can do this tomorrow at the federal building, Agent Rodriguez said. But honestly? The optics of that are going to be rough. Especially with the cameras outside. More manipulation. Even the FBI was playing games with my life now. Fine. Record it. Agent Morrison tapped his tablet. October 23, 8:47 p.m. Agents Rodriguez and Morrison interviewing Sarah Patterson regarding case 2024 CR 1847. Rodriguez sat forward. Mrs. Patterson, how familiar are you with your husband's investment consulting business? I found out about it 3 hours ago in the courthouse parking lot. You never saw business cards with your name on them? Never signed incorporation papers for Patterson Financial Consulting? I thought of David's home office, the room he'd claimed as his sanctuary. Honey, I just need one space that's completely mine, you know? For decompressing after work. I'd respected that boundary for years, only going in to vacuum or bring him coffee. David handled all our paperwork. Taxes, insurance, everything. He said I was too busy with work to worry about the business stuff. I made air quotes, hating how naive I sounded. Agent Morrison pulled up something on his tablet. Mrs. Patterson, we have security footage from First National Bank showing you depositing a check for $12,000 on August 3, 2023. The check was made out to Patterson Financial from a client named Robert Hendricks. The room spun. August 3rd, I remembered that day because it was the day before my sister's wedding shower, and I'd been stressed about getting time off work. David had asked me to make a quick bank run because he was stuck in meetings all day. He gave me a check to deposit, I said slowly. He said it was a bonus from his firm. Some kind of profit-sharing thing. You didn't look at who the check was from? God, how stupid had I been? No. I trusted my husband. Agent Rodriguez made a note. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Hendricks invested his entire disability settlement with your husband. $87,000 from a workplace injury that left him unable to work construction. He was expecting a 20% return within 6 months. Robert Hendricks. The name meant nothing to me, but somewhere out there was a disabled man who couldn't work, who'd trusted David, trusted us, with everything he had. Another life destroyed by my husband's lies. The $12,000 was probably his first fake payment, I whispered. To make Mr. Hendricks think the investment was working. That's our theory, yes. Classic Ponzi scheme tactics. Agent Morrison scrolled through more files. Mrs. Patterson, we've traced 17 similar deposits made by you over the past 14 months. Always during business hours when your husband claimed to be unavailable. 17 times. 17 times I'd walked into a bank and deposited stolen money, never questioning where it came from because David had trained me so well to trust him, to not ask inconvenient questions. How much? I asked. Total? Just over $200,000. I stared at them. $200,000 went through my hands. Into accounts with your name on them, yes. My phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Someone had posted my address online. I could see cars starting to gather outside, people with phones pointed at my windows. Mrs. Patterson, Agent Rodriguez said gently, I have to ask. Did you ever suspect? The expensive dinners when money was supposedly tight, the cash he'd come home with, the way he always handled the banking? Had I suspected? Or had I just been so desperate for everything to be okay that I'd ignored every red flag? Last Christmas, I said slowly, he bought me a diamond bracelet. Real diamonds, from that jewelry store downtown. I asked how we could afford it when we'd been eating rice and beans for weeks, and he said. I stopped, remembering. What did he say? He said I worried too much. That I should just let him take care of the finances and focus on being happy. I laughed bitterly. He made me feel guilty for questioning a gift. Agent Morrison's tablet buzzed with what looked like an urgent message. He showed it to Rodriguez, whose expression darkened. Mrs. Patterson, she said, we just got word that 3 more victims have come forward. People who invested with Patterson Financial in the last month. That's impossible. David's been in jail since. Since October 8th, yes. These investments were made October 10th, 12th, and 15th. The room went completely silent except for the sound of my heart hammering in my chest. Someone's been running the scam while David was locked up, Agent Rodriguez continued. Someone with access to the accounts, the client list, and the ability to forge signatures on investment contracts. They were both staring at me now. You think it was me, I said. Agent Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Patterson, where were you on October 10th between 2 and 4 p.m.? October 10th? My mind scrambled through the blur of days since David's arrest. I was at work. Double shift at the clinic, we were short-staffed because 2 nurses called in sick with that flu that's been going around. Agent Morrison made a note. Can anyone verify that? Dr. Patel, the charge nurses, probably 20 patients. I felt a flicker of relief. Finally, something I could prove. I was covering the pediatric ward from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 16 hours straight. I barely had time to eat lunch. But Agent Rodriguez wasn't writing this down like good news. She was frowning at her partner's tablet. Mrs. Patterson, the investment meeting on October 10th was conducted via video call. The client, Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, said she spoke with Sarah Patterson at 3:15 p.m. about moving her late husband's pension into a high-yield investment account. The words hit me like a physical slap. That's impossible. I was giving medications to a 6-year-old with pneumonia at 3:15. I remember because his mother kept asking about his fever and I had to call Dr. Henderson for new orders. Mrs. Vasquez was very specific, Agent Morrison said. She said you were professional, knowledgeable about her financial situation, and that you referenced details about her husband's death that made her feel comfortable trusting you. How much? I whispered. $68,000. Her entire pension. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. The crowd outside had grown, maybe a dozen people now, some with signs. I could make out justice for MSK on one of them. Mrs. Kowalski supporters, demanding answers I didn't have. Someone is pretending to be me, I said, turning back to the agents. David must have told someone how to access the accounts, the client information. Maybe he had a partner. Agent Rodriguez exchanged another look with Morrison. Mrs. Patterson, the video calls were made from this address. Your IP address, traced through your internet provider. My legs gave out. I sank back onto the couch, staring at them. That's not possible. I wasn't here. Check the hospital records, the security cameras, the medication logs. We will, Rodriguez said. But Mrs. Patterson, we also have to consider the possibility that someone else was in your house. Someone with access to your computer, your personal information, and detailed knowledge of the investment scheme. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Someone had been in my house while I was working, using my computer to steal from grieving widows and disabled veterans. Someone who knew David's system well enough to seamlessly continue the scam from my living room. The laptop, I said suddenly. David's laptop, you said the FBI seized it last week. But he had two. A work laptop and a personal one. Morrison's head snapped up. Where's the personal laptop now? I ran to David's office, the agents following close behind. The room looked exactly as David had left it, papers scattered across the desk, coffee mug with a ring of mold, his lucky pen still lying next to the keyboard dock. But the laptop was gone. It was here, I said, pointing to the empty dock. Always plugged in right here. David was obsessive about keeping it charged. Rodriguez was already on her phone. We need a crime scene team at the Patterson residence. Possible BNE, missing computer equipment. She covered the phone. Mrs. Patterson, when was the last time you were in this room? I tried to remember. Since David's arrest, I'd avoided his office like it was contaminated. Maybe a week ago? I brought in some boxes to pack up his things, but I couldn't. I gestured helplessly at the chaos. It felt like trespassing. Any signs of forced entry? Broken windows, damaged locks? I shook my head. But David gave keys to people. His brother Mike has one for emergencies. His mother has one. And my stomach dropped. Marcus Chen. We gave him a key last summer when we went to my sister's wedding in Cleveland. Morrison was photographing the empty dock, the cables, the dust outline where the laptop had been. Mrs. Patterson, did your husband ever mention business partners? Anyone else involved in the investment consulting? No, but he never told me about the investment consulting at all. I slumped against the doorframe, exhausted. I thought I knew everything about David's life. Turns out I knew nothing. My phone rang, another unknown number. I declined it, but immediately another call came through. Then a text from my sister Julie in Seattle. Sarah, someone posted Mom's address on Facebook. She's getting calls. What the hell is going on? Mrs. Patterson, Agent Rodriguez said gently, is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? This is going to be a crime scene for the next several hours, and with a crowd outside. Through David's office window, I could see more cars arriving. Someone had set up a folding table on the sidewalk with a sign reading Victim Fund donations accepted. Mrs. Kowalski's daughter was there, I realized. The one who worked at the bank downtown. I don't know, I said honestly. My closest friends had stopped calling after David's arrest, not out of cruelty, but out of awkwardness. What do you say to someone whose husband steals from cancer kids? My family was scattered across the country, and I couldn't afford a hotel. What about the key holders? Morrison suggested. Your brother-in-law, the mother-in-law, the friend Marcus? I almost laughed. Patricia thinks I should be standing by David through his appeals. Mike hasn't spoken to me since the arrest. He thinks I should have seen the signs, should have stopped David somehow. And Marcus. I paused. Marcus is the one who told me about the investment scam in the first place. The agents looked at each other again, that silent communication that made my skin crawl. Mrs. Patterson, Rodriguez said carefully, when Mr. Chen told you about the investment scheme today, how did he seem? Nervous? Guilty? Guilty, I said immediately, then stopped. But I thought he felt guilty for not telling me about the gambling earlier. For not warning me. Morrison made another note. Did he know you'd be at the courthouse today? Everyone knew. The sentencing was public record. But even as I said it, I realized how convenient it had been. Marcus, appearing right after the trial, making sure I knew about the investment scheme before the FBI could blindside me with it. Marcus, who had a key to my house and knew David's business better than anyone. Marcus, who could have easily slipped into my house while I was working double shifts, stealing David's laptop and enough personal information to impersonate me on video calls. My phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number. It was Marcus. I stared at Marcus's name on my phone screen, my hand frozen halfway to answering it. The agents were watching me intently, and I could feel the weight of their suspicion shifting like a living thing in the room. Don't answer it, Rodriguez said quietly. Not yet. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Marcus was persistent, or desperate. Mrs. Patterson, Morrison said, pulling out his own phone, I'm going to have our tech team trace that call, see where it's coming from. Can you think of any reason Mr. Chen would be calling you right now? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sarah, I just heard about the FBI visit on the news. Are you okay? Don't say anything without a lawyer. Agent Rodriguez read the message over my shoulder. How would he know we're here? The news crews just arrived 20 minutes ago. Another text, I'm coming over. Don't let them railroad you. Then another, remember, you don't have to answer their questions. He's trying to coach you, Morrison observed. That's interesting behavior for someone who's supposedly trying to help. My mind was reeling, trying to rewrite the last few hours with Marcus as the villain instead of David's regretful friend. The way he'd appeared so quickly after the sentencing, almost like he'd been waiting for me. How he'd known exactly which reporters had the story, exactly when it would break online. The way he delivered each devastating piece of information, the investment scam, my forged name on the business cards, Mrs. Kowalski's stolen retirement fund, like he was reading from a script. Agent Rodriguez, I said slowly, when you trace those video calls from October 10th and 12th, can you tell if it was actually a woman speaking? Or could it have been? I don't know, voice-altering software? She nodded grimly. We're analyzing the audio now. But Mrs. Vasquez was adamant that she spoke with a woman who knew specific details about her life. Her husband's name, where he worked, even the name of their dog. David kept client files, I said, gesturing around his cluttered office. Everything about their lives, their families, their fears. He said it made them trust him more when he could reference personal details. Morrison was photographing the file cabinets now, pulling out folders stuffed with handwritten notes. Jesus. Look at this. He held up a manila folder labeled Eleanor Vasquez in David's careful handwriting. Inside were bank statements, copies of her husband's death certificate, and a yellow sticky note that read, lonely, mentions dog Buster constantly, wants to feel like Frank is still providing for her. My stomach lurched. David had turned grief into a science, mapping out exactly how to exploit each victim's emotional vulnerabilities. And now someone was using his playbook to continue destroying lives while I took the blame. There, Rodriguez said, pointing to another folder. Robert Hendricks, the construction worker with the disability settlement. David wrote desperate, ashamed about not working, needs to feel smart about money decisions. We were quiet for a moment, absorbing the calculated cruelty of it all. Then Morrison's phone buzzed with what looked like an urgent alert. We just got the trace on Chen's call, he said, reading his screen. It came from a cell tower 3 blocks from here. He's in the neighborhood. As if summoned by his words, there was a sharp knock at my front door. Not the aggressive pounding of the FBI, but the familiar 2 short 1 long pattern Marcus had used since college when he came over for game nights. Mrs. Patterson, Rodriguez said, we'd like you to answer the door. Act normal. We'll be listening from the kitchen. My hands were shaking as I walked to the front door, the agents melting into the shadows behind me. Through the peephole, I could see Marcus on my front porch, looking agitated and checking his phone repeatedly. The news van was still there, camera trained on my house like a weapon. I opened the door, and Marcus immediately pushed past me into the hallway. Sarah, thank God. I've been calling you for an hour. The news is saying the FBI thinks you were David's partner. His eyes were wide with what looked like genuine concern, but now I couldn't tell if anything about Marcus had ever been real. I brought you something. He held out a business card, Jennifer Walsh, criminal defense attorney. Marcus, No, listen, he interrupted, gripping my arm. Jennifer's the best in the city. She handled the Benedetto case last year, got him acquitted on federal fraud charges. I already called her, told her about your situation. She can be here in an hour. It sounded helpful. It sounded like exactly what a concerned friend would do. But all I could think about was my missing laptop and Marcus's convenient timing and the fact that he somehow knew details about the FBI investigation that hadn't been made public yet. How much does she cost? I asked, testing him. Don't worry about that. I'll cover the retainer. It's the least I can do after. He gestured vaguely, as if David's crimes were just an unfortunate accident we all had to navigate together. After what, Marcus? Something flickered across his face, so quick I almost missed it. After not warning you sooner. About David's gambling problem. But that wasn't what he'd been about to say. I was suddenly, completely certain of that. Marcus, I said carefully, how did you know the FBI was here? The news vans just arrived. Marcus froze, his hand still gripping my arm. For just a second, his mask slipped completely, and I saw something cold and calculating in his eyes that I'd never noticed before. Channel 8 did a breaking news alert, he said, but his voice had lost that concerned friend warmth. They said federal agents were questioning you at your home. Marcus. I pulled my arm free. Channel 8 doesn't know I'm being questioned. They're just filming the FBI van in my driveway. How did you know this was about questioning and not just evidence collection? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sarah, you're being paranoid. The stress of all this is. Don't. The word came out sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare gaslight me like David did. I've had enough of men telling me I'm imagining things. Marcus stepped back, his hands raised in a placating gesture, but I could see him calculating behind his eyes. The same look David used to get when he was deciding which lie would work best. Okay, he said slowly. You're right. I should have been more specific. Agent Rodriguez called the office around 9:15, asking about David's laptop and whether anyone else had access to client files. I put 2 and 2 together. That sounded plausible. Almost plausible enough. But Agent Rodriguez had been in my living room at 9:15, starting the interview that led to discovering my missing laptop. What office, Marcus? You said David's firm fired you after his arrest. Another flicker. Another micro-expression as someone caught in a lie. Contract work, he said quickly. I'm helping them sort through David's files, identify potential victims for the FBI investigation. For free? Out of the goodness of your heart. Sarah, what's with the interrogation? I'm here to help you. But he was backing toward the door now, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the October chill. Help me like you helped Mrs. Kowalski? Like you helped Robert Hendricks? Marcus went completely still. I don't know what you mean. October 12th, Marcus. Eleanor Vasquez. $68,000. Were you in my house using my computer while I was working a double shift, or did you just help David set up the remote access? The transformation was instant and terrifying. The concerned friend vanished entirely, replaced by someone I'd never seen before. Marcus's shoulders squared, his expression hardened, and when he spoke, his voice was flat and businesslike. You can't prove anything, Sarah. And even if you could, who's going to believe you? You're the grieving wife who claims she knew nothing while depositing hundreds of thousands in stolen money. I'm the concerned friend trying to help the families get their money back. The families you helped steal from. Marcus pulled out his phone, and I could see him opening the camera app. Sarah, I'm worried about you. You're making wild accusations, acting erratic. I think the stress of David's crimes is affecting your mental health. He was going to record me. Create evidence of the hysterical, unstable wife having a breakdown while the noble friend tried to reason with her. More manipulation, more lies designed to make me question my own sanity. But I wasn't the same woman who believed David's stories about bank errors and missing jewelry. That woman had died in a federal courthouse at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. Agent Rodriguez, I called loudly toward the kitchen. I think you need to hear this. Marcus bolted for the door, but Agent Morrison was already there, blocking his exit with the solid presence of someone who'd tackled fleeing suspects before. Marcus spun back toward me, his phone clattering to the floor, and for a moment his mask slipped completely. You stupid bitch, he snarled. Do you have any idea how much money you just cost me? Agent Rodriguez stepped into the hallway, her weapon drawn but lowered. Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. As Morrison cuffed him, Marcus looked directly at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Sarah. There are things about David you don't know. Things that are going to destroy what's left of your pathetic little life. The federal building at 9 a.m. was nothing like I'd imagined. No dramatic marble columns or imposing architecture, just a bland office complex that could have housed an insurance company. I sat in Agent Rodriguez's cramped office, nursing my third cup of terrible coffee and trying not to think about Marcus's final threat. Things about David you don't know. I barely slept, replaying those words over and over while police processed my house as a crime scene. The Holiday Inn had been my refuge for exactly 6 hours before someone, probably a helpful citizen from the victim fund table, posted my location online. By midnight, there were protesters in the parking lot. Mrs. Patterson? Agent Rodriguez looked as tired as I felt. Thank you for coming in voluntarily. I know yesterday was eventful. Eventful. Like finding out your husband's best friend had been using your identity to steal from disabled veterans was just another Tuesday inconvenience. Did Marcus talk? I asked. Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Morrison, who'd positioned himself by the door like he expected me to run. Mr. Chen has requested an attorney. But we did find some interesting things when we searched his apartment. She opened a manila folder and spread photographs across her desk. David's missing laptop, still open to what looked like a video calling program. Stacks of documents with my forged signature. And something that made my blood freeze, printouts of my work schedule from the clinic, dating back 3 months. He'd been planning this for a while, Morrison said. Tracking your shifts, learning your routines. The man's got detailed notes about when you grocery shop, when you see Dr. Martinez, even when you get your oil changed. He was stalking me. The words felt surreal. Marcus, who'd eaten Thanksgiving dinner at our table for 5 years running. Who'd helped David surprise me with a birthday party. Who'd sent flowers when my father died. It gets worse, Rodriguez said quietly. She pulled out another photograph, a bank statement from an account I'd never seen. Patterson Holdings LLC. Opened in the Cayman Islands 18 months ago, with you listed as the primary account holder. The number swam before my eyes. Deposits totaling over $400,000, spread across dozens of transactions. My signature, or Marcus's perfect forgery of it, authorizing each one. Sarah, Rodriguez leaned forward, her voice gentle but urgent. We need to know everything about your relationship with Marcus Chen. Every conversation, every time he was in your house, every detail you can remember. I thought back through years of friendship, trying to identify the moment when Marcus had stopped being David's college buddy and started being something else. When had he begun studying me like a mark instead of treating me like a sister-in-law? Last Christmas, I said slowly. The diamond bracelet David gave me? Marcus was there when I opened it. He made a joke about David's Christmas bonus being bigger than he thought. I remember thinking it was weird that Marcus would know details about David's work compensation. Morrison was taking notes. What else? He knew my grandmother's maiden name. Used it in conversation once when we were talking about genealogy websites. I thought David had mentioned it, but... I paused, a cold realization washing over me. He was collecting information. For security questions on bank accounts. Mrs. Patterson, Rodriguez said carefully, I need to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. When we arrested Mr. Chen last night, he claimed he was acting under instructions from your husband. He says David knew about the continued investments, that they planned the whole scheme together before David's arrest. The room tilted sideways. That's impossible. David's been in federal lockup. No contact except monitored calls to his lawyer. Actually, Morrison said, consulting his notes, David made 3 calls to Chen's office number in the week before his sentencing. Each call lasted less than 5 minutes, short enough to avoid detailed monitoring. I stared at them, trying to process this new betrayal. Even locked away, even facing 3 years in prison, David had been orchestrating the destruction of more lives. Using Marcus as his proxy to continue stealing while I unknowingly provided the perfect cover story, the clueless wife who couldn't possibly be involved because she was too stupid to see what was happening under her own roof. There's something else, Rodriguez said. She pulled out a transcript, pages of dialogue that looked like a phone conversation. This is from David's call to Marcus on October 6th, 2 days before his arrest. Our monitoring system flagged it this morning. She slid the transcript across the desk, and I read David's words with growing horror. David Patterson, the Sarah angle is perfect. She'll never figure it out, and even if someone gets suspicious, who's going to believe she wasn't involved? She's been depositing the checks for months. Marcus Chen, what if she gets a lawyer? Starts asking questions? David Patterson, then we use the mental health angle. She's been seeing a therapist since last year, anxiety, depression, all documented. Unreliable narrator. Unstable wife cracking under pressure. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the pages. David hadn't just stolen my money and forged my name, he planned to destroy my credibility, my sanity, my entire sense of reality if I ever got too close to the truth. How long? I whispered. How long were they planning this? Rodriguez flipped to another page. Based on the evidence we've found, at least 14 months. The investment scheme wasn't a desperate last resort, Mrs. Patterson. It was always the endgame. 14 months. While I'd been working double shifts to pay bills David claimed were from his anxiety spending, he and Marcus had been methodically planning to frame me for their crimes. Every concerned conversation, every helpful suggestion, every moment of seeming support had been manipulation designed to position me as either the perfect accomplice or the perfect patsy. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez's office. Sarah, I saw the news. Your appointment Thursday has been cancelled. Dr. Martinez thinks it would be best if you found a new therapist given the circumstances. Even my therapist was abandoning me. Mrs. Patterson, Morrison said gently, we know this is overwhelming. But we need you to understand, Marcus Chen is going to try to make a deal. He's going to offer up information about other victims, other crimes, in exchange for a reduced sentence. And his story is going to be that you were the mastermind behind everything. The words hit me like ice water. Mastermind? Marcus is going to claim I was the mastermind? Agent Rodriguez nodded grimly. It's a common defense strategy. Blame the spouse, claim coercion or manipulation. And honestly, Sarah, from the outside looking in, his story has some compelling elements. She pulled out another file, this one thicker than the others. You deposited every single check. Your signatures are on multiple account documents. You had access to David's office, his files, his computer passwords. And now we have Marcus claiming that David told him you were the one pushing for bigger scores, more victims. But that's insane, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Why would I work double shifts as a nurse if I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars stealing from people? Morrison leaned forward. Marcus's story is that the nursing job was your cover. That you deliberately chose a profession that would make you seem sympathetic, trustworthy. He says you coached David on which patients' families to target, people dealing with medical bills, elderly folks facing long-term care costs. The accusation was so twisted, so precisely crafted to use my own life against me, that I actually laughed. A short, bitter sound that made both agents straighten in their chairs. Of course. Of course that's the story. I should have seen it coming. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a headache. How many people is Marcus going to claim I helped target? Rodriguez consulted her notes. 37 confirmed victims so far. Combined losses of just over $600,000. 600,000. The number was so large it felt abstract, meaningless. But each digit represented someone's destroyed future, retirement savings gone, college funds evaporated, disability payments stolen from people who'd already lost everything else. There's something else, Morrison said quietly. We found a storage unit rented under your name in Monroeville. Paid for with a credit card we traced back to the Patterson Holdings account. My stomach dropped. What's in it? We don't know yet. We're getting a warrant this afternoon. But Sarah. Rodriguez leaned across the desk. You need to prepare yourself. If Marcus has been planning this frame job for over a year, if David was helping him design it specifically to implicate you, then that storage unit probably contains evidence that's going to be very difficult to explain away. My phone rang, Julie, my sister in Seattle. I declined the call, but it rang again immediately. You should answer it, Rodriguez said. Family support is going to be crucial if this goes to trial. I picked up on the fourth ring. Jules? Sarah, thank God. Julie's voice was tight with panic. Mom just called me crying. Someone posted her address online, and people are showing up at her house. Angry people with signs. Robert's afraid to leave for work. Oh God, Jules, I'm so sorry. Sarah, what is happening? The news is saying you were David's partner. That you helped him steal from cancer kids and old people. Tell me that's not true. I looked at the agents watching me, at the files full of evidence that painted me as either a criminal mastermind or the world's most gullible victim. Either way, I was radioactive now. Anyone associated with me would be contaminated by the scandal. Jules, I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said. Take Mom somewhere safe. A hotel, maybe Robert's sister's place in Tampa. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't contact me for a while. Sarah, you're scaring me. I'm scared too. But this is going to get worse before it gets better, and I can't let you and Mom get hurt because of David's mess. There was a long pause. Sarah, Julie said finally, did you know? Any of it? The question I'd been dreading from the one person whose answer mattered most. No, I whispered. I didn't know anything. But Jules, I don't think anyone's going to believe me. After I hung up with Julie, Agent Rodriguez slid another document across the desk. Sarah, there's something else we need to discuss. The storage unit in Monroeville? We got the warrant expedited. Our team opened it an hour ago. My mouth went dry. What did you find? Morrison pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like crime scene photos. Boxes of client files. Personal documents belonging to victims. And this. He turned the phone toward me. The photo showed my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one David had supposedly sold to a pawn shop months ago. It was sitting in a small jewelry box next to my mother's silver serving set, the one that had gone missing from our dining room last Christmas. He never sold them, I breathed. David never sold any of it. There's more, Rodriguez said gently. Wedding rings, watches, family photos. Items belonging to at least 12 different families. Mrs. Kowalski's engagement ring is in there, along with a purple heart that belonged to Robert Hendrick's father. The room spun. He was collecting trophies. That's our assessment, yes. But Sarah, here's the problem, the storage unit was rented in your name. Your signature on the lease, your credit card for the monthly payments. And according to the facility's security cameras, you visited that unit 6 times in the past 4 months. I stared at them. That's impossible. I've never been to Monroeville in my life. Morrison turned his phone again, showing me grainy security footage. A woman with my height and hair color, wearing scrubs, walking into the storage facility. The timestamp read September 18th, 3:42 p.m. I was at work on September 18th, I said automatically. Mrs. Chen, not related to Marcus, was having surgery prep for her hip replacement. I remember because she was so nervous about the anesthesia. But even as I said it, I realized how easily Marcus could have found someone who looked like me from a distance. How perfectly he'd been setting up this elaborate frame, creating evidence that would seem ironclad to a jury. We're checking your work records, Rodriguez assured me. But Sarah, a defense attorney is going to argue that hospital schedules can be manipulated, that someone with your access could have adjusted the records after the fact. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. We know where you live, bitch. Cancer kids don't forget. Then another, hope you rot in hell like your husband. Agent Morrison glanced at my screen. Mrs. Patterson, we'd like to recommend protective custody. The threats are escalating, and with Marcus claiming you were the ringleader. Protective custody means jail, I interrupted. Different name, same cage. A safe cage, Rodriguez said. Sarah, 3 more victims came forward this morning. A veteran who lost his disability settlement, an elderly couple who mortgaged their house to invest with Patterson Financial, and a single mother who gave you her son's college fund because she trusted David's promise of guaranteed returns. Each name hit like a physical blow. More lives destroyed, more families left with nothing because my husband and his partner had turned cruelty into an art form. The single mother, Rodriguez continued, checking her notes, Linda Morrison, no relation to Agent Morrison here, she says she met with you personally in July. At a Starbucks in Shadyside. She described you perfectly, said you knew details about her son's learning disability and his dream of studying engineering at Carnegie Mellon. July. I tried to remember where I'd been, what I'd been doing, but the months since David's arrest had blurred together into one long nightmare. Agent Rodriguez, I said slowly, I need to see those security photos again. All of them. She spread them across the desk, 6 different visits to the storage unit, each showing the same woman in scrubs walking purposefully toward the building. But in the third photo, dated August 15th, something caught my eye. The woman was carrying a distinctive purple water bottle, the kind with a built-in straw that I'd seen in Marcus's office a dozen times. That's not me, I said, pointing at the photo. Look at the water bottle. And look at her left hand. Morrison squinted at the image. What about it? No wedding ring. I never take off my wedding ring, even after everything David did. It's still on my finger right now. I held up my left hand as proof. But more importantly, that water bottle belongs to Marcus's assistant, Jennifer Kim. She's Korean American, about my height, similar build. In scrubs and a baseball cap, from that distance. The agents exchanged glances. Rodriguez was already reaching for her phone. We need to bring in Jennifer Kim for questioning. And I want every piece of security footage from that Starbucks meeting in July. My phone rang again, this time, Patricia, David's mother. Don't answer it, Morrison advised, but I was already swiping to accept. Patricia, I can't talk right now. Sarah Elizabeth Patterson, you listen to me. David's mother's voice was sharp with fury. I just got off the phone with Marcus Chen's mother. She says you're trying to frame her son for David's crimes. That you threatened him, tried to make him take the blame. The lie was so perfectly crafted, so precisely designed to turn David's own family against me, that I had to admire Marcus's thoroughness even as it destroyed what was left of my world. Patricia, that's not. How dare you drag that poor boy into your mess? Marcus was David's friend. He trusted you, tried to help you, and this is how you repay him? She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone while the agents watched with something that looked like pity. Sarah, Rodriguez said quietly, we're going to prove your innocence. But it's going to take time, and it's going to get uglier before it gets better. Through the window of the federal building, I could see protesters gathering in the plaza below. Signs reading justice for the victims and lock her up bobbed above a crowd that seemed to grow larger every minute. Somewhere in that crowd were people whose lives David and Marcus had destroyed. People who deserved answers, justice, their stolen futures returned to them. And they all believed I was the monster who'd taken everything away. Agent Morrison's phone buzzed with an urgent alert just as I was trying to process Patricia's betrayal. He frowned at the screen, then showed it to Rodriguez. We've got a problem, he said. Jennifer Kim didn't show up for work today. Her apartment manager says she moved out over the weekend. Paid 3 months' rent in cash and disappeared. My stomach dropped. She's running. It gets worse, Rodriguez said, reading over Morrison's shoulder. The Starbucks security footage from July? The hard drives were wiped clean last week. Professional job, according to their IT department. Someone with serious technical skills erased 6 weeks of recordings. Marcus hadn't just been planning to frame me, he'd been systematically eliminating evidence that could prove my innocence. Every alibi, every witness, every piece of surveillance footage that might clear my name had been carefully destroyed while I'd been working double shifts and trusting him to be David's grieving friend. There's more, Morrison continued, scrolling through his messages. The nurse who called in sick on October 10th, the day of the Eleanor Vasquez video call? Rebecca Torres. She's been unreachable since yesterday. Her neighbor says she left town suddenly for a family emergency. Let me guess, I said bitterly. Rebecca Torres looks like me too. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Same height, similar build. She's been working per diem shifts at the clinic for 8 months, long enough to learn your schedule, your routines, your patient stories. The conspiracy was bigger than I'd imagined. Marcus hadn't just used David's greed and my naivete, he'd infiltrated my workplace, recruited people who could impersonate me, created an entire network designed to make me look guilty while keeping himself invisible. Agent Rodriguez, I said slowly, how did Marcus know to recruit Rebecca Torres? How did he know she'd be willing to participate in fraud? Morrison was already pulling up what looked like a background check. Rebecca Torres. 2 bankruptcies in 5 years, defaulted student loans, evicted from her last apartment for non-payment of rent. She needed money badly. And Jennifer Kim? Similar story. Drowning in credit card debt, supporting elderly parents, behind on her car payments. Rodriguez looked up from her phone. Sarah, Marcus didn't choose these women randomly. He targeted people who were financially desperate, just like David targeted the investment victims. My phone rang again, Dr. Patel from the clinic. I should take this, I told the agents. Sarah, Dr. Patel's voice was strained. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did you ever give patient information to anyone outside the hospital? Family details, financial situations, anything that could be used for non-medical purposes? The question hit me like a slap. Of course not. That would be a HIPAA violation. Someone's been asking questions, Sarah. Calling former patients, claiming to be from our billing department, asking about their financial status and family situations. The calls were traced back to a number registered under your name. Another phone registered in my name. Another piece of evidence that would make me look guilty to a jury. Dr. Patel, I swear to you, I never. I believe you, Sarah. But the hospital administration doesn't. Security reviewed the access logs for our patient database. Your login credentials were used to access files for 43 patients over the past 6 months. All during hours when you weren't scheduled to work. 43 patients. Marcus had been using my stolen credentials to harvest information about vulnerable families, turning my own workplace into a hunting ground for victims. Dr. Patel, someone stole my passwords. They've been impersonating me. The FBI agent who called this morning explained the situation. But Sarah, the hospital has no choice. They're terminating your employment effective immediately, and they're reporting the suspected HIPAA violations to the state nursing board. I hung up, staring at the phone in my hands. In less than 24 hours, I'd lost my job, my reputation, and any chance of working as a nurse again. Even if I proved my innocence, the nursing board would never trust someone whose credentials had been compromised so thoroughly. Agent Rodriguez was watching me with something that looked like genuine sympathy. Sarah, there's something else we need to discuss. The storage unit contained one more item that we haven't mentioned yet. She pulled out a photograph that made my blood freeze. It was my father's Purple Heart, the one he'd earned in Vietnam and passed down to me before he died. I kept it in a safety deposit box at First National, along with my mother's jewelry and our insurance papers. That's impossible, I whispered. That medal is in my safety deposit box. I have the only key. Morrison consulted his notes. The bank records show the box was accessed on September 22nd at 2:17 p.m. Security cameras show you entering the bank and leaving with a small bag. I was in surgery that day. Mrs. Williams had complications during her gallbladder removal. I was in or 3 from noon until almost 6 p.m. But even as I said it, I knew how it would look to a jury. Another perfectly timed alibi that could be challenged, another piece of evidence that made me look like either a liar or a fool. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop trying to blame Marcus. We know what you did. Then another, your mother's new address in Tampa is 1247, Hibiscus Lane. Shame if something happened to her. The blood drained from my face. They'd found my mother. Agent Rodriguez saw my expression and immediately took my phone. We're tracing this number and putting a protection detail on your mother and sister. Sarah, someone is escalating this campaign to frame you. We need to move fast. Through the window, I could see the crowd of protesters had doubled in size. Someone had brought a megaphone and was reading names, the victims David and Marcus had destroyed. Mrs. Kowalski. Robert Hendricks. Eleanor Vasquez. Linda Morrison and her son who'd never get to study engineering at Carnegie Mellon. Each name was a life destroyed, a future stolen, a family left with nothing but debt and betrayal. And they all thought I was the one who'd done it to them. Agent Rodriguez's phone rang, cutting through the tension in the small office. She answered on the second ring, her expression growing darker with each passing second. When? She asked tersely. How much? A long pause. Jesus Christ. We'll be right there. She hung up and looked at Morrison with an expression I'd never seen on a federal agent's face before, genuine fear. Marcus made bail, she said quietly. Posted by an anonymous benefactor 20 minutes ago. $500,000 in cash. My heart stopped. How is that possible? You arrested him for federal crimes. His lawyer argued that he was cooperating, providing valuable information about other victims. The judge bought it. Rodriguez was already gathering files, shoving them into her briefcase. But that's not the worst part. Sarah, Marcus walked straight from the courthouse to Channel 8 News. He's holding a press conference in 30 minutes. Morrison pulled up a live feed on his phone. I could see Marcus standing on the courthouse steps, looking like a picture of wounded innocence in his navy suit and perfectly knotted tie. The cheering at the bottom of the screen read, Victim's friend speaks out about wife's role in fraud scheme. Turn it up, I whispered. Marcus's voice filled the small office, smooth and concerned. I'm speaking today because Sarah Patterson is trying to destroy my life to cover up her own crimes. For months, I watched her manipulate my best friend David, pushing him to find bigger investments, riskier schemes. She was the brains behind everything. The lies flowed like poison. Marcus described secret meetings where I'd allegedly planned which victims to target, how I'd used my nursing job to identify vulnerable families, how I'd become addicted to the power of controlling other people's money. David was weak, Marcus continued, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Sarah preyed on that weakness. She convinced him that they deserved the money more than the victims did. When David finally grew a conscience and wanted to stop, Sarah threatened to leave him unless he continued stealing. Agent Rodriguez muted the feed, but I could see reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. Marcus was performing beautifully, the loyal friend reluctantly exposing the truth about his manipulative, criminal sister-in-law. He's good, Morrison admitted grudgingly. Whoever coached him knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. My phone started ringing immediately. Unknown numbers, one after another. I let them all go to voicemail, but I could see the messages piling up. Death threats, probably, mixed with reporters begging for my side of the story. Sarah, Rodriguez said urgently, we need to move you somewhere safe. After that performance, you're going to be the most hated woman in Pittsburgh. Through the window, I could see the crowd of protesters had tripled in size during Marcus's press conference. Someone had printed new signs, Sarah Patterson, the real monster, and Nurse Ratched stole our futures. But it was the smaller group that terrified me, 6 or 7 men in dark jackets who weren't carrying signs or chanting with the crowd. They were just watching the federal building with the patient intensity of predators. Agent Rodriguez, I said quietly, who posted Marcus's bail? $500,000 in cash isn't exactly pocket change. She and Morrison exchanged glances. We're looking into it. But Sarah, whoever it was, they wanted Marcus free for a reason. This press conference was planned, choreographed. Someone with serious resources is backing his story. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I recognized, Dr. Martinez's office. Sarah, I'm watching the news. Whatever you're going through, please don't do anything permanent. Call the crisis line if you need help. 988. Even my former therapist thought I might hurt myself rather than face the consequences of crimes I didn't commit. Agent Morrison's radio crackled to life. All units, we have reports of shots fired at 1247, Hibiscus Lane, Tampa. Officers responding to a welfare check on Elizabeth Chen. My mother. Someone had actually gone to my mother's house. Is she okay? I grabbed Rodriguez's arm. Please, is my mother okay? Rodriguez was already on her phone, speaking rapidly to someone in the Tampa field office. After what felt like hours, she hung up. False alarm, she said, but her voice was tight. Someone called in a fake report about gunshots to draw police to your mother's address. Classic swatting technique. But Sarah, it means whoever threatened her knows exactly where she is and has the resources to coordinate attacks across state lines. The room felt like it was shrinking around me. Marcus wasn't just trying to frame me, he was orchestrating a campaign to terrorize my family, destroy my credibility, and eliminate anyone who might help prove my innocence. And somewhere out there, someone with enough money to post a $500,000 bail was pulling the strings. My phone rang again, this time a number I almost didn't recognize. Julie, but calling from what looked like a prepaid phone. Sarah? Her voice was barely a whisper. We had to ditch our phones. Mom and I are in a hotel under Robert's name, but people keep finding us. Someone threw a brick through Robert's car window with a note that said, tell your daughter-in-law we're coming for her. The guilt was crushing. My family, innocent people who'd never hurt anyone, were being hunted because David and Marcus had decided to use my name on their crimes. Jules, I'm so sorry. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Julie's voice cracked. The woman on the news, the one who says you threatened her son if she didn't invest her college fund. She knew about Tommy's seizure disorder. She knew specific details about his medical condition that only family should know. Tommy was Linda Morrison's son, the single mother who'd lost her child's college fund to Patterson Financial. But Julie was talking about him like she knew him personally. Jules, how do you know about Tommy Morrison? A long pause. Sarah, Tommy Morrison is my patient. I'm his pediatric neurologist here in Seattle. His mother called me 3 weeks ago, crying, saying the nice nurse from Pittsburgh had promised her investments would pay for his seizure surgery. The words hit me like ice water. Linda Morrison hadn't just been a random victim, she'd been specifically targeted because Marcus knew I had a connection to her son through my sister. Julie, I said slowly, how would Marcus know about your patients? How would he know you treated Tommy? I don't know. Unless. Another pause. Oh God, Sarah. Last Christmas, when David and I were talking about our jobs. I mentioned Tommy's case because it was so heartbreaking, a single mom working 3 jobs to afford his medication. I remember David asking lots of questions about the family's financial situation. I thought he was just being compassionate. David had been taking notes. Even during family Christmas dinner, he'd been cataloging potential victims, using my sister's medical cases as a shopping list for people to destroy. Agent Rodriguez was listening to my side of the conversation, her expression growing grimmer by the minute. She gestured for me to put the call on speaker. Julie, this is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. I need to ask you some difficult questions about your conversation with David last Christmas. My sister's voice was shaky. He wanted to know about families who were struggling financially but still had assets. Retirement accounts, insurance settlements, anything that could be invested for better returns. He said Sarah had mentioned wanting to help people, and he was thinking about offering financial consulting services. More lies. More manipulation. David had used my supposed desire to help people as cover for identifying the most vulnerable families to target. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez continued, did David ask for specific patient names or contact information? No, but. Julie's voice got smaller. I may have mentioned that Linda Morrison was from Pittsburgh originally. Her ex-husband's family still lives there. David said he'd be happy to talk to her if she ever needed local financial advice. Agent Morrison was already pulling up files. Sarah, we have records of David calling Linda Morrison in February, 8 months before you supposedly met with her at Starbucks. He spent 47 minutes on that first call, building trust, learning about her son's medical needs. The timeline was becoming clear. David had spent months grooming Linda Morrison, using information from Julie to build a relationship based on fake compassion for her son's condition. By the time I allegedly met with her in July, she already trusted the Patterson family completely. There's more, Rodriguez said, checking her phone. We just got the forensic report on Marcus's laptop. Sarah, he had detailed files on your entire extended family. Your sister's patient list, your mother's medical records, even your cousin in Denver's financial information. My family hadn't just been collateral damage, they'd been research subjects, unwitting sources of information for David and Marcus's victim database. Julie was crying now. Sarah, I'm so sorry. If I hadn't talked about my patients, if I hadn't trusted David. This isn't your fault, I said, though my own voice was breaking. None of us knew what they were doing. Agent Morrison's radio crackled again. Rodriguez, we've got a situation at the Patterson residence. Someone firebombed the garage. Fire department's on scene. My house was burning. Through the window, I could see smoke rising in the distance, a black column against the gray October sky, marking the destruction of the last physical place I could call home. The evidence, I said numbly. All of David's files, anything that might prove I'm innocent, was already removed by our crime scene team, Rodriguez assured me. But Sarah, this escalation is exactly what we were afraid of. Whoever's backing Marcus wants you completely destroyed, reputation, family, property, everything. My phone buzzed with a text from yet another unknown number. That was just the garage. Next time it'll be wherever you're hiding. Then another, Marcus Chen is a hero for exposing you. Hope you burn like your house. Agent Rodriguez stood up abruptly, gathering her files. We're moving you to a federal safe house immediately. This has gone beyond character assassination. Someone's trying to get you killed. As we prepared to leave, Morrison's phone rang. He listened for a moment, then his face went white. What? Rodriguez demanded. The anonymous donor who posted Marcus's bail, Morrison said slowly. We just traced the money. It came from a trust fund registered to Brennan and Associates, David's former employer. The accounting firm that David had stolen from. The company whose children's cancer charity he'd robbed to feed his gambling addiction. Someone at Brennan and Associates wanted Marcus free, wanted his story to be believed, wanted me destroyed. But why would David's former employer help the man who was supposed to be exposing the truth about our crimes? Unless they weren't trying to expose the truth. Unless they were trying to bury it. The breakthrough came at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, 3 weeks into my stay at the federal safe house. Agent Rodriguez burst through the door with Morrison close behind, both looking like they'd been running. Sarah, we got him, Rodriguez said, breathless. We got them all. She spread photographs across the safe house kitchen table, Marcus in handcuffs, Jennifer Kim being led into a federal building, and someone I didn't recognize, a thin man in an expensive suit. Meet Richard Brennan Jr., Morrison said, pointing to the stranger. Son of the accounting firm's founder, and the mastermind behind everything. I stared at the photo. I don't understand. Why would David's boss help frame me? Rodriguez pulled out a thick file. Because David wasn't just stealing from the charity fund. He stumbled onto something much bigger. Richard Jr. had been embezzling from client accounts for years. Millions of dollars, all carefully hidden in the books. When David started his gambling spree and needed to cover his tracks, he accidentally accessed the wrong server partition. David found evidence of Richard's embezzlement, Morrison continued. So Richard made him a deal, keep quiet about the missing millions, and Richard would help cover David's smaller thefts from the charity fund. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. But when David got caught anyway. Richard panicked, Rodriguez finished. If David talked to investigators, if he tried to make a deal by exposing the bigger crimes, Richard would lose everything. So he recruited Marcus to create a massive distraction. She pulled out another document, a bank transfer for $2 million from Brennan and Associates to an offshore account in Marcus's name, dated 3 days after David's arrest. Richard paid Marcus to continue the investment scam using your identity, Rodriguez explained. The goal was never just to frame you, it was to make the story so big, so scandalous, that no one would look deeper into Brennan's books. A evil nurse wife stealing from cancer kids? That's front page news. Corporate embezzlement by the boss's son? That's business section, page 12. Morrison opened his laptop, showing me security footage from Brennan and Associates. Richard had access to all of David's client files, his computer passwords, even copies of his signature specimens from HR records. He gave Marcus everything needed to forge documents and impersonate you. What about Rebecca Torres and Jennifer Kim? Richard recruited them through a temp agency he owned, Rodriguez said. Told them they were participating in corporate security testing, seeing how easily someone could impersonate an employee. Paid them $5,000 each to wear scrubs and visit various locations while being filmed. My phone rang, a number I recognized from the federal prosecutor's office. Mrs. Patterson? This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh. I have wonderful news. All charges against you have been formally dropped, and we're prepared to offer full public exoneration. The words felt surreal after weeks of being portrayed as a monster. What happens now? Richard Brennan Jr. has agreed to a plea deal. Full restitution to all victims, plus he's turning over evidence of additional fraud schemes involving dozens of other companies. Marcus Chen is looking at 25 years minimum. And Mrs. Patterson? The victims' families have been informed that you were completely innocent. After I hung up, Rodriguez smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. There's more good news, she said. Channel 8 is running a full retraction tonight. Mrs. Kowalski's daughter specifically asked to apologize publicly. And the State Nursing Board is not only restoring your license, they're commending you for your cooperation with the federal investigation. 3 months later, I stood on the courthouse steps where Marcus had delivered his poison press conference. This time, I was the one facing the cameras, but the questions were different. Mrs. Patterson, how does it feel to have your name cleared? I looked out at the crowd, not protesters this time, but reporters, victim advocates, and several familiar faces from my former life. Mrs. Kowalski was there, tears streaming down her face as she held a sign reading, "We're sorry, Sarah." I'm relieved, I said simply. For 27 months, I lived in fear of my husband, fear of financial ruin, fear of losing my sanity. Then I lived in terror of prison, of being hated by people I'd never met, of my family being hurt because of lies. I paused, thinking of David in his federal prison cell, where he'd remain for the next 18 years after additional charges were filed. But you know what I'm most relieved about? I can finally sleep at night knowing that I'm exactly who I always thought I was, someone who helps people, not someone who hurts them. David and Marcus tried to steal that from me along with everything else. They failed. That evening, in my new apartment across town, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the letter that had arrived that morning. It was from Linda Morrison, the single mother whose son's college fund had been stolen. Dear Sarah, it began. I owe you the biggest apology of my life. Tommy's surgery was successful, the restitution fund covered everything, plus his future medical expenses. But more than that, I learned something important about the difference between justice and vengeance, between being angry and being cruel. I'm sorry we made you pay for crimes you didn't commit. I'm sorry we didn't listen. Thank you for your grace through all of this. Tommy wants to study forensic accounting now. He says he wants to catch the bad guys like Agent Rodriguez caught the ones who hurt our family. I set the letter aside and looked around my small, peaceful apartment. No hidden debts, no forged signatures, no lies lurking in the shadows. Just silence, safety, and the knowledge that I'd survived something designed to destroy me. My phone buzzed with a text from Julie. Dinner Sunday? Mom's making her famous pot roast. Robert says he owes you an apology and a very large dessert. I smiled, typing back, I'll be there. And Jules? Thank you for believing me when no one else would. Outside my window, Pittsburgh sparkled in the evening light, the same city where David had tried to bury me under his crimes, where Marcus had painted me as a monster, where I'd lost everything and found myself again. I was finally, completely free. And I'd never felt more relieved in my life.